Google Forms is a great way for educators to assess student learning and understanding. This tutorial will explain how to create a Google Form, how to use the quizzes feature, how to create and edit questions, how to use the quizzes feature to automatically grade and generate results, how to assign it as a quiz, and how to return the results to your students. Play, pause, and rewind this video as needed when you create your first Google Form. This video also has a teacher's manual that explains the content of this video. Feel free to download that tutorial by following the link below in the description box. Remember to like the video and subscribe to my station. Stay connected with me as well by following me on Twitter or on my blog. Let's get started so you can get assessing. The first step you must take is to actually create your Google Form. To do that, go to the blue New box on the left side. Click on that box, go down to More, and select Google Forms. And this is what you will see when you open a Google Form. Our second step is to title our Google Form. This will help us stay organized. To do that, highlight Untitled Form. Once that is highlighted, go ahead and name the form. I'm going to simply call this Sample Form. Now, to get that to appear in the actual form, I click here where it says Untitled Form and it automatically appears. Notice the folder up here. If I want to organize this Google Form and move it from the folder that I created it in, I would click on that. I would then be able to move this anywhere I would like to. I don't want to move it though, so I'm just going to close that out. So our third step is to learn the icons. On that teacher's manual that I referenced in the introduction, it has a diagram of all of the different icons and what they mean. I'm not going to dedicate parts to the video to explain each one. We will learn them as we go. So our fourth step is the general settings. To go to the settings, I click on the icon that looks like a gear. So general is the default that will appear. Now, there are all these different options here. I'm going to kind of talk through these a little bit. I always collect my email addresses of my students. The reason for this is that way I can email them back the results of the quiz. They can see which questions they got correct and which questions they got incorrect. I'll explain how to do that later in the video. Now, I also limit to one response for my students. The reason I do this is if I did not do this, they would actually be able to open the quiz, look at the questions, and then close it, and then go back and open it up again at a later time. It just opens up the opportunity for cheating. So again, the last two, I am just going to leave blank. So I can either hit save, but I really want to open up Google Forms and use the quizzes feature. So click on quizzes. To make this a quiz, you simply slide this little tab over here, or you just click there. Now it automatically chooses certain options for you. Let's talk about these options like we did under the general settings. It defaults to immediately after each submission. That is what you would want to use if you were using this quiz for formative assessment, where you would want the students to get immediate feedback. I like immediate feedback as well, just not on quizzes that students are going to be taking later in the day. Again, this is a security reason. I don't want students in my first period class seeing what they got correct or incorrect and then sharing that with students later in the day. So what I always do is I always check later after manual review. So I do want students eventually to be able to see the missed questions, their correct answers, and the point values for different answers. So this really starts to unlock some of the positive qualities of Google Forms quizzes. So I'll simply hit save. Next, I want to give this form a description. To do that, I simply click on where it says Form Description. I use this for my directions. Because of time, I simply typed in my directions. Read each question carefully, select the best possible answer. Now notice there's already one question here that asks students to verify their email address. It's also got a red star. That means it's a required question. I did that in the settings. But now there's this untitled question. So Google Forms automatically creates the first question for you. Let's learn how to edit this question. To edit, I simply click on untitled question. So now I'll be able to type my question. With all of my quizzes, I ask the same basic questions right from the start. What's your email address? Then my next question is always, what is your first name? Now notice it automatically changed this type of question from a multiple choice question to a short answer question. If it does not do this automatically, click the drop down arrow and you can see the different types of questions you can ask. So now I want to show you how to duplicate a question. I always ask for their email address, their first name, their last name, and what class period. Before I'm finished with this question, I want to make this question required like the email address question above. So to do that, I click here on the Required tab. It automatically makes this question required. Along with asking for email address and first name, I need to find out my student's last name. Since I'm asking basically the same question, I'm going to duplicate what is your first name. So to do that, I click on the icon that looks like two papers on top of each other. Notice everything about this question is the same. The questions are the same. It has the same requirements as well. So all I need to do is change first to last. To do that, I just highlight first and type last. Next step we're going to learn is how to create a question. To create a question, click on the plus button along the right side. This will add a question. So again, I have different choices here. I first want to choose what type of question I want. I'm going to be asking students what class period they're in, so I'm going to choose multiple choice. So I have multiple choice, and then I simply type in the question, what class period are you in? Now to create my options, I simply highlight option 1, and I'm going to write 1. Then I go to add option, 2, 3, 4, and I would do this for all of the classes that I teach. So those are all identifying questions. Email address, first name, last name, what class period are you in? Again, I want to mark this to be required. I do this and I ask these questions separately because they will all appear into a spreadsheet eventually under different columns. So now I'm going to get into the question part. So I want to add a different section. To do that, I click this, it looks like an equal sign, the add section icon. It actually is a different page or a different section. So it creates section 2 of 2. I'm going to give this section a title. So I click on it to highlight it, and I'm just going to call it Quiz Questions. So let's see how we create questions that grade themselves automatically. So we need to create a new question. We went over this earlier in the video, so just hit the plus sign. I'm going to type my question where it says question. What is 2 plus 2? So now I have to have options. So my options are going to be 0, 2, 4, or 6. Now, teachers, you are going to love this because this is actually going to grade these questions for you. Now, to have Google Forms quizzes do that, click on Answer Key. Then choose the correct answer. So I've chosen 4. Notice there's a green check mark there. That means it's the correct answer. And now I have to assign a point value to it. I can click on this and type in the point value, or I can just scroll up. I'm going to make this worth 1 point. So now what we would do is continue to create other questions. I like to have sections of 5 or less questions. I find this is easiest for my students. To do that, I just click the plus and it adds my next question there. Now let's say you want to work on this with other teachers. You want them to be able to administer this form. You want them to be able to add or remove questions from that as well. What we're going to do is we're going to call it adding collaborators. Now to do that, you go up to this 3 dots, which stands for more, click on it, and select add collaborators. When I do that, I would simply type in the name of the person who I want to add as a collaborator, and then I would hit send. Understand by doing this, they will be able to edit the questions and the answers. Hit cancel and then done once you've done that. Now that our form is created, we want to share it with our students so they can take the form. So we want to administer it. So there's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to show you how to use Google Classroom. First thing you need to do is hit send. That's going to bring you to this box. To share it in Google Classroom, click on the link icon. It looks like a chain. So then if you select copy, I can then copy that, and I'm going to go to my Google Classroom. I'm going to go over here to the plus button, and I'm going to click on the create announcement. So I'm going to write in this message box the name of the quiz. So then to attach the link, I would then click on the link icon, and I'll simply paste the link in there and click add link. Now to share this with my students, I'm going to simply select post. Selecting post creates this post, and now my students can click on here to take this quiz. If you don't have Google Classroom and you would like to share this with your students, there are other ways to do this as well. If you use social media, you can share it through social media. You could also click this shorten URL button here. And what it does is it gives you a more manageable link where you could then write that link on the smartboard or on your chalkboard, and students could simply type that in and it would take them directly to that link. When you are sending a link, I never check this box, include form in email. Again, I do not check that box because of test security. If that box is checked, when students open up their email, they will see the form in there. They could then forward that to others who have yet to take the test or quiz. Google Forms quizzes provide you with lots of information and lots of data about how they did on that quiz. This is a very useful tool for teachers that want to use this assessment as a way to figure out what they need to reteach to their students. So to find out how your students did, click on responses. So you'll probably be in the questions tab, click to responses. Now this gives me quite a bit of information right from the start. I'm in the summary view, so it first tells me the average out of 5 points, the median score, and the range of scores. Now, if I want to look at the total points distribution, if I hover over one of the bars, it tells me how many students scored 5 points on this assessment. Same thing with 4, 3, 2, 1 point, and then 0 points. So if I were to continue to scroll down, I can see how they did on all of the questions as a group. I intentionally scrolled past their names, but I asked them identifying questions of their first and last names and their email addresses. For their security, I'm going to skip over them. But see, there's a pie chart here. This shows me the breakdown of what class period they're in. I give quiz codes as well, a little bit for test security. That's going to be explained in Google Forms Quizzes Part 2. It's just a little more advanced, and I didn't want to include that in this video. So then it goes question by question, and you can see what the correct answer is in the bar graph. It tells you what percentage of students got it correct, and then which percentage of students answered the other possible choices. This gives you a clear indication of whether or not students understood that question. And if they missed it, and many of the students marked the same answer, that's going to give you good information when you go back to reteach that. So that's going to do that for each question that's a multiple choice question. So you can see I'm scrolling through here, and I can see how well students answered or understood each question. Along with looking at the responses as a summary, I can also do this by selecting question. So I've skipped ahead to question number 5, and what this does is it just shows me what the question is and then how many students answered it each way. So to figure out different questions, click on the arrow here to go to next questions. The next tab is individual. If I click on individual, this is going to let me see each individual's quiz. So again, I scrolled down a little bit to protect the students' names and identifying information. But see, this is a specific individual student's quiz here. So I could scroll down to see how they answered on each one. Now if I go all the way up to the top, I will then be able to see who it is and click over to the next student. The next feature I want to show you in the responses is to look at your students' responses in Google Sheets. When I click on that, it's going to open up a spreadsheet. Now, the first time you click on that, you are going to have to create a spreadsheet. To do that, it will prompt you. There'll be a create button. Simply click create. Now notice it has all of this different information. It timestamps the quiz. It collected their email address because that was one of my questions. It scored the quiz automatically, and then we see first name and last name, class period, and then over here are each student's individual answers. So it's just another way to look at how your students answered questions. This will be particularly helpful when transferring grades to your gradebook. The last item I want to show you here under responses is this accepting responses. When I have this open, that means students can access the Google form and answer questions. If I click right here, it turns the Google form off and students can no longer answer questions. One of the more challenging aspects of digital assessments that I have found is giving students feedback on digital assessments they take. Google Forms quizzes makes this easier for you. To return quizzes, their grade, how they did on each individual question, you're going to click on the Release Scores button. So click that down here at the bottom. Once you click the Release Scores button, this message is going to appear. What you can do is you can type in a message here if you would like. So I typed in this message that I want my students to see. So then all I would do is click Send Emails and Release. When students go to their inbox, this is what they will see. They'll get an email with their score. For them to see how they did on each individual question, they need to select View. This is what they will see. They'll see the actual quiz that they took. It has the question. Then it has what they answered. In this case, they answered Webster-Ashburton Treaty, when in fact the correct answer was Gadsden Purchase. So it tells them they missed this question and it gives them the correct answer. We see the second question there. They got it correct. So it shows what they answered and then it gives them the check mark. I hope this tutorial was helpful to you. Be looking for Google Forms Quizzes Part 2 coming soon.